Hi everyone, it's Kate from the Forge Line. I am back this week with the Sewdown. This is our roundup of stuff that we've read, listened to, watched, some interesting exhibitions, stuff to sort of keep you entertained while you're doing a bit of sewing. Hope you've had a lovely week. I was feeling a bit blue, so I decided to buy myself a bunch of flowers here, which are just so giving me so much joy. They are beautiful, beautiful dahlias. They're actually from, I'm sure many of you heard that Lisa, who owns Sew Over It, has now gone on to set up her own flower farm, and these are from her because it's nice to support a friend who's got a business, and they are just beautiful. So they are here bringing me a lot of joy. Right, let's get started. Sorry, I've got distracted already. I'm 1 second in. So, stuff to watch. First thing I've got, I'm sure many of you have booked tickets or are planning to go and see the Coco Chanel exhibition at the V&A. It's on for ages. It's supposed to be absolutely incredible. I must go very soon and I think it'll be amazing. There is a really lovely documentary on the BBC. It came out a while ago called Coco Chanel and Buttons. If you haven't seen it yet, it's definitely worth going and watching. Really interesting. Kind of gives, I mean, I know it's a topic that has been covered a lot and there's been a lot about her, but this sort of adds a bit of extra sort of, I don't know, a bit of interest. It's really good. It's really well done. So if you haven't seen it yet, that's definitely worth going and having a watch. There is, sorry, my dog is down. Edie. She's itching herself, and you can probably hear loads of rustling, so apologies. She likes to do that in amongst packaging. Right, get back to so stuff to watch. We have got this really beautiful film that someone emailed in and said it was amazing. I haven't watched it yet. I'm actually going to wait until it comes out so I can rent it, but it was out at the cinema. It's called The Nettle Dress, and I'm going to pop a link to the trailer of it. It looks absolutely incredible. If you haven't had a chance to go and see it yet, I just think it's going to be, it's so beautifully shot. It feels to me like in between a film and a piece of art. It's about someone who's dealing with loss, and their way of doing it was collecting nettles every day, and they used the fibres and made it into a cloth. I almost don't want to say anything else. It's so beautifully shot, and the wording is beautiful, and the way, yeah, I think it's going to be amazing. So if anyone knows where I can rent it, let me know, because I really do want to see it. Next up, I've got something that someone emailed in actually, which looks so great. So the women who do Haptic and Hue, and we've spoken about their podcast quite a lot of times, they have they emailed, and one of them has produced this documentary about Barbara Brown, who was a really well, I guess famous is not the right word, massively well respected textile artist in the sort of 60s, and it's a they sent us a thing so that we could watch the trailer, and it looks fab. So you can rent it and watch it, and I think it will be really great. So if that sort of decade interests you in terms of the aesthetic, I think it's definitely worth going and watching. I think it'll be lovely. The trailer looks really great, so that's another nice thing to go and watch. I've got a couple of books, an article, and some, yeah. So book wise, this one I got sent by my mum, and my mum does send me links to stuff quite often, which I'm going to be honest, I do quite often ignore. But this one, I don't know why, she just got me at the right time, and actually looked really interesting. I've downloaded it, so I'm starting to listen to it. It's called The Dress Diary of Miss Anne Sykes, Secrets from a Victorian Woman's Wardrobe. So I'm very early stages, but the it's basically a woman researching a textile diary of this woman called Anne Sykes, and she kept for, she worked within the textile trade and kept this like beautiful visual diary of all the dresses that she made for people, with little scraps of the fabric and descriptions, and basically a kind of fabric diary. And I think it's going to be really fascinating because they basically, someone finds this in Portobello, they have it in their possession for, I think it's like 40 years, and then it gets handed to Kate, who wrote it, and she then wanted to find out all about the person who had the kind of diary. And it's really lovely, massive escapism, which is what I feel like we all need a bit at the moment, because everything in the world feels pretty terrible. And I think it's really nice. And I've started the audio one. If anyone's an audio listener, the voice of the narrator is nice. It's not an annoying voice, which is essential. The other book is, someone emailed us about this, which sounds really interesting. It's a kind of, almost in the same vein. So it's a true story. It's historic. So it's called The Winter Dress, and it's about a... Actually, if I read it out to you, this probably describes it better than me, because I haven't actually read it yet, but I've just read the sort of blurb, and it sounds really fab. So Jo Baker, a textiles historian and Dutch expat, is drawn back to the island where she was born to investigate the provenance of a 17th century silk dress. Retrieved by local divers from a sunken shipwreck, the dress offers tantalising clues about the way people lived and died during Holland's famous Golden Age. I mean, do you need anything else? That to me is enough. I'm sucked in. I think it would be really interesting. So, 2 bits of sort of, I don't know, textile-y books which I thought might be of interest to everyone. A really lovely article, BBC News, about Darlington Library, which I know sounds quite, I don't know, just seems like a bit of a jump from this, but it was really interesting. They've refurbed the whole library, huge refurb. They've got sewing machines in the library which you can rent. How cool is that? So go have a read of that article, because I just think it's amazing. And actually the photographs of the inside of the library is such a beautiful building. But yeah, how great, you can go in there and sew. So if you are local to Darlington, go and I wonder if you're allowed to take your machine in and sew. Anyway, go and have a look. 2 exhibitions. One of them is at the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford. This is called Colour Revolution, Victorian Art, Fashion and Design. It's open until February next year, but I thought this sounded really interesting exhibition. It's got lots of beautiful outfits on display, and it sounds like a really interesting exhibition because it's based around the sort of Industrial Revolution and how those sort of scientific breakthroughs fed down to cloth production. So it sounds like a really interesting exhibition. So if you are local to Oxford or you're planning a trip around there for the next few months, that's definitely, I think, worth going to have a look at. And then there's another exhibition at Somerset House called The Missing Thread, Untold Stories of Black British Fashion. And this looks really great. I'm actually booking a ticket to go and see this at the weekend. So it says, spanning from the 1970s to the present day, The Missing Thread charts the shifting landscape of Black British culture and the unique contribution it's made to Britain's rich design history. It looks like it's going to be really great. So again, if you are, and loads of really great outfits are going to be on show. So if you are in that area or around, I think when does this go on till? Until January, so you've got quite a bit of time if you're planning a trip to London. Right, stuff to listen to. I've got a few podcasts. There is a murder one for the murder enthusiasts. The first one is on, it was a you know, radio, well, if anyone listens to Radio 4, quite often I will be wafting in and out of a room and I catch the end of a programme and it's a really interesting one, and then you end up going back and listening. So this one, this programme I listened to was about, the title of it was Taste. There's 4 episodes in it, and it's talking about that each of them span a sort of have different themes. So the first one is self, the second one is tribe, the third one is artifacts, and the fourth one is institutions. And they're really interesting way of thinking about how and why you own stuff and what it says about you and your history in the owning of artifacts. It's quite an interesting way of thinking. It made me think about all my possessions in a completely different way, and I found it really fascinating. So that is worth going and having a listen. Next up, we've got a podcast. I've spoken about this podcast before, but it's the How to Fail podcast with Elizabeth Day, which is so great. She has really amazing conversations with people about failure and what that has done to kind of change them for the better. And there's one with Sarah Pascoe, who is, if you don't know, she's the presenter on Sewing Bee. I'm sure you all do know that, but just in case. And it was a really nice one, actually. I will say that there is quite a bit of talk about fertility and miscarriage in it, so if you find that tricky subject, then it's definitely one to avoid. So moving on to another tricky sort of podcast, but one that's been very well produced. It's been made by the company called Tortoise. If you haven't come across them yet, their podcasts are really fantastic. They are so well produced. They're just brilliant, and it's called 3 Doors Down. I've listened to the first episode, and it's about a murder of a child. So again, a tricky subject, but so well done, and how it took the family nearly 20 years for him to be, or 30 years I think it is, to be found guilty, and he lived 3 doors down from them, and it's really well done. So that's worth going and having a look at, listen to. Next up, a bit niche, but I am really enjoying this, and I'm sure many of you are already listening to it already. McCartney, A Life in Lyrics. It's so fantastic. So each episode they talk about a different song that he's written. I have just listened to the Eleanor Rigby one, which is so fantastic and really interesting, and he interviews him, and it's just, I really love them. And if you are a Beatle fan, or your parents are Beatle fan, I don't know, it's so nostalgic, well, personally, but I really enjoying that. So that's definitely worth going and have a try of that. And then last but not least on the podcast front is Who Robs a Banksy? It's a Podimo podcast, and they produce fantastic podcasts, and it's about someone stealing a Banksy, and I'm only one episode in, but it's very well done, and they do podcasts so fantastically. There's such good suspense in them, so it's definitely worth going and having a listen to. I absolutely am really loving this. So I hope that is good, and you've got some nice stuff to keep you entertained for the next month or so. We'll be back soon with another video. Have a lovely, lovely weekend.